I'm so excited. I love this movie.
Ryan, it's about to start.
Sorry.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Meredith,
And I'm Ryan.
and this is the show where each episode we get a movie recommendation from our teacher, Mr. Bender, go watch them, and then bring them back here to talk to you about them.
This week we asked for a comedy, and our teacher, Mr. Binder, recommended us a movie called Top Secret, which was, I believe, made in 1984.
Yep.
The description is a popular and dashing American singer named Nick Rivers travels to East Germany to perform in a music festival. When he loses his heart to the gorgeous Hilary Flamand, he finds himself caught up in an underground resistance movement. Rivers joins forces with Agent Cedric and Flamand to attempt to rescue her father, Dr. Paul, from the Germans, who have captured the scientist in hopes of coercing him into building a new naval mine. It was given a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, and frankly, I think it deserves higher. But
I would agree with that, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I have a bit more information about the movie. It was directed by Jim Abrams and David and Jerry Zucker, and the Zucker brothers made other parody movies in their time, such as Airplane, which is another very funny disaster type movie. And it made about $12 million at the box office, which is interesting. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about this movie, but it seems pretty popular among film buffs and fanatics of film. So, it is, of course, a parody movie, which, if you don't know, a parody is just a silly composition of a movie, and it's based on other types of films. So there's war parodies, and there's disaster parodies like Airplane. There's horror movie parodies, and so on and so forth. So a couple examples of parodies that I have seen and come up with are Airplane, of course, by the Zucker brothers. Austin Powers is another great example. Those movies are great spy parodies. Monty Python, anything by Monty Python is pretty much a parody. And a more recent example is Scary Movie, the spoof of Scream and several other scary movies. And overall, parodies are great. They're very fun to watch, very just lighthearted. You can sit down, you don't have to pay too much attention, but very funny and good entertainment, in my opinion.
and if you do pay attention, you're rewarded quite well because some parody movies are fantastic, like this one.
Oh, for sure. There's so many amazing jokes in parody movies, and when you pay attention, you just catch so many great
Yeah.
lines and stuff. So I think that this movie was honestly fantastic. I was kind of nervous going into it because I had never heard of it, but I've heard from people since I got this movie recommended to me that it's fantastic,
Yeah.
and I would fully agree. So, do we want to get into talking a bit about the movie and some things that we picked up on?
Yeah. So it starts out with this spy character. I forget his name. Do you remember his name? Is that Cedric? Was it?
Cedric.
Yes, Cedric. He's this British spy character, and the film starts out with him like on top of a train car that's moving, and he's fighting this like German guy, and then it slowly like transitions to this group of like German military men like sitting around a table, and one of them gets a phone call talking about this oh, actually no, I misspoke. It wasn't a phone call. This is the first part of the movie that really made me laugh. A soldier walks up to one of the military generals and he hands him a piece of paper saying that the British agent escaped. And the German guy takes a stamper and he stamps on the paper and it says "Find him and kill him."
I also found that really funny that he has the pre-made stamp.
Yeah.
And it's established right at the beginning of the movie that it's set in East Germany, which do you, Ryan, know a lot about East
Not
Germany?
much, really. No.
I do because I took one of the German courses here at the high school. They talk a lot about East Germany. Basically, it was a authoritarian socialist regime in Germany, very controlling. If you spoke out against the government or did something against the government, you would pretty much be killed for it, tracked down in prison, killed. It wasn't good in East Germany. So throughout the movie, they poke fun at East Germany a lot, and there were some pretty enjoyable lines
Oh,
at the top of the.
I speaking of that, I remember at one part they're doing they called it the East German national anthem.
Oh, I wrote that down
Yeah,
because
and
I thought it was
the
so
what were
funny.
the lyrics? The
Um,
lyrics were even if you try to jump the wall, forget it. The guards will kill you if the electrical fence doesn't first.
yeah, the East German hymn that they wrote was very, that was very good. I also, the paper that you mentioned that says like the British spy escaped, at the top of it, it said East Germany, a better government through intimidation. And I laughed, I laughed really hard at that because they were a very intimidating government, but also so over controlling. And seeing a movie that like just pokes fun at how controlling they were was very fun.
Something I liked a lot about this movie was a lot of movies like nowadays comedy movies is they really rely on like just vocal jokes, you know. But this movie was a lot of like physical, like on screen jokes, you know. Cause like a lot of like there's some good movies nowadays, but really like I feel like it's just verbal jokes, and there was a lot of verbal jokes in this movie too. But I feel like it was mostly physical jokes
Mhm.
and visual jokes, which I liked a lot because it's good to see that because I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on. After that first scene, then it gets into it sort of introduces Nick Rivers, but it doesn't directly introduce him. It starts by playing a song, I say in quotes, that he has. It was called Skeet Surfing,
Yeah,
which
and
was
that's a parody of Surfin' USA by the
yeah,
Beach Boys. And it's this whole big scene of people on a beach with weapons.
with guns riding surfboards. And if you don't know what skeeting is, they basically they launch a clay like disc into the air, and the point of it is to try and shoot it out of the air so it
Mhm.
like shatters. So the song was about that, but they were surfing at the same time.
Yeah.
So the whole scene is like just a bunch of people riding on surfboards, like shooting guns into the air. And at one point, I really like this part. At one point, there was like a big, like wide shot of just a bunch of people with surfboards and guns running toward the water. And buried deep in the crowd, there was just this old lady running with them.
Yeah, there were a lot of just like visual cues in this movie that were funny. There was a scene with an old lady later in the movie that I definitely want to touch on because it was really funny. I just want to talk about Nick Rivers' character a little
Yeah.
bit for a second because obviously he's this American hero type and he comes to East Germany and he's not like he's very popular because he's an American uh, musician. I want to talk a bit about Val Kilmer because this was actually his first film. I saw his first feature film. He did all of the singing himself
Oh,
for the
wow.
film, which I thought was really cool because I actually liked some
It's
of the
great
songs.
singing. It is
It's
great singing.
great
He has a
singing.
great voice.
And he sort of like embodies Elvis Presley and Little Richie. He actually does a Little Richie song when the one Russian guy, the one comrade, was supposed to go up to sing, and Nick
Oh
Rivers
yeah,
walked.
yeah.
Like they were like, "Oh, we want to introduce our guest, who's a very talented musician," and he like
And
goes up on
Nick being
stage.
the like arrogant, like prideful dude he is, automatically assumes they're talking about him, but really they're talking about some other guy in the crowd.
It was
But
a
he
very esteemed Russian
yes.
comrade who was being honored to sing at this event, and Nick Rivers just walks up on stage and starts singing a Little Richie song. That was good.
Oh man.
Um, yeah. So, would you like to continue on?
Oh yeah,
Is
but
he-
yeah. So Nick arrives in East Germany. Another part that I really liked. They arrive on a train. It's the first time you ever really see him, and he's like painting on an easel, looking out the window. And you know, if you've ever been on a train or a car, or pretty much anything that moves, when you're driving fast, the scenery is blurry. So he's just painting on an easel. You don't see what he's painting, and he turns it around. It's just like a blurry, drawn picture of like the scenery going.
yeah, I noticed that. And the whole conversation that they were having, they were like, "Oh yeah, I'll learn how to speak German." In the background, a radio is playing, and it's like, it sounds like a German language on tape type
Yeah,
of thing.
like an educational thing.
But yeah, it's just saying total nonsense. Like I think one of the lines was like, "There's a schnitzel in my pants,"
Oh
and
yeah.
it's just also
Oh, it was. There's a schnitzel in my lederhosen.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
what it was.
But yeah, something that I picked up on was most of the German in this film was either complete gibberish, like "There's a schnitzel in my lederhosen," or something like I think they said something about like a lightning rod at one point. Like it just makes no sense in the context of what they're trying to say. And I did a little bit of research after. Some of it was also Yiddish, which doesn't
That's kind of funny.
which it sounds like German, but it's just not, and you
Yeah.
can tell if you
Yeah.
know German. So I just thought, like, there's a scene where they're ordering in a restaurant and they're speaking in Yiddish instead, and Nick looks really confused because he's like, I don't understand German, but they're not speaking German. So yeah, so that was another good detail that I enjoyed.
But yeah, after the train, he arrives in Germany and he's at like an opening ceremony type thing. That's where the East German national anthem in quotes is played.
Yeah.
And then after that, he goes to like a dinner, like this like big formal dinner, and he meets this girl named Hillary. And Hillary is the one whose father is in prison, and eventually Nick meets him when he's taken to prison. They go to a ballet, and Nick is sitting on one balcony, and on a balcony across from the room is Hillary. And a man comes up behind Hillary, a German, I believe it was, and he puts a gun to her head. And Nick, being the hero he is, goes over and he takes that man, throws him off the balcony, saves Hillary. She gets away, but eventually he's arrested and taken to prison.
Yeah, that whole scene was funny because Nick, the guy that he threw over the balcony was, I think, a police official, and someone like runs over and he's like, "What did you just do?" And Nick's like, "Call the police," and he was like, "That was the police."
Yeah.
And I thought that was really funny. Yeah, and so then he goes to prison and he meets the Dr. Flamen, who's Hillary's father. He's in prison because the East German regime wants him to create a submarine magnet.
Yeah, it was like a mine, like a water mine, but it had a massive magnet on it.
Yeah.
And the idea was that the magnet would attract to submarines and blow them up with the mine.
Yeah, so basically, like, the mine would fly through the water at a submarine and hit it. And Nick's like, "Oh, could you give me a demonstration?" He
hits a button and
a
a submarine flies through the wall
prison.
and attaches to the magnet.
Yeah. that was really good. 'Cause, see, that's just part of like the parody aspect of it is like it's just total ridiculousness. And during this whole thing, Nick is set to be executed because he
threw the guy off the balcony.
He attacked a German officer, and the guy died.
Oh yes, that was one of my favorite parts. Nick, he's like in a torture chamber, and the one like German official is in there, and he's saying that like he better hope the person he threw off the balcony is fine, or else he'll be like sentenced to death or whatever. And then this guy gets a phone call, and he picks up the phone. He's like talking, like I guess it's like the hospital or something. And he says, "Tell me if there's any changes in his condition." He hangs up the phone, and then he says, "He's dead."
That
Oh
was
man,
really good too. So yeah, Nick is set to be executed by a firing squad, and one of the East German officials are talking, and I think Nick's lawyer is there too, and he's like, "Well, you'll disrupt things, and like America's gonna be mad, the UN's gonna be mad. Like if you execute this man, things will not be good for East Germany." And so the East German official is like, "Okay, call them and tell them to tell them to call it off. We're not gonna execute him by firing squad." And then it cuts to Nick like attached to a pole, and the firing squad is like getting ready. and there's a phone in front of like the firing squad, and it's ringing and it keeps ringing
And then
as they're like preparing, and then this old lady with a walker
just
is like slowly walking towards
it.
it, and it just takes like forever.
And eventually
then
it cuts
to Nick's
performing.
performing. But when I was doing like research on this film, I found out that there was a longer extended cut of that scene where the lady walks to the phone and then it stops as she's like almost there. So she starts walking back and then it rings again because they're like, oh, we really can't execute this guy. So she turns around and goes back and then like gets the phone. I just think that that's like such a fun gag.
Yeah.
And like just yeah, that was very good. So then it cuts to Nick performing again and the crowds are going crazy and whatever, and he's like relieved because he's not dead. And then his performance ends, everyone's cheering, and then Hillary comes in and like gets Nick, and they leave, and the East German officials are like chasing after them.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, and there was one point as they're escaping, they walk out of a balcony, like staircase outside, and there's like bikes on the ground under them, and Hillary's like, quickly on the bike, and there's like 2 bikes for them, and then there's a bunch of like police bikes, like
Yeah.
bicycles, not like motorcycles.
Yeah.
And Nick like he's shoeing a horse,
Yeah.
shoos the
Yeah.
bicycles away, and they ride
The
away on their own.
bicycles just move away
so
on
the
their
police
own.
can't chase after them.
Yeah, that was a good one. Do you remember where they went after that? Like specifically where they went after that because I don't.
Oh, they went to like a bookstore or something.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So they go to this Swedish bookstore and they go in and Hillary starts speaking to the keeper of the shop, and they're speaking backwards, and you can
Yeah.
like tell that they're speaking
Yeah.
backwards because it's just a reversed clip. And they walk through this whole bookstore speaking backwards and like moving. You can tell that the whole scene has been reversed, but they do this whole scene where they talk and they walk through the bookstore and they start putting books back and the books are like flying
Yeah.
because it's in reverse. And then they go up a fire pole.
Yeah, just
Both
like
of
against
them.
gravity, they just
Yeah,
float
they
up a
just, like-
fire pole.
Like a rocket, just like
Yeah.
shoot up the fire pole. And then the scene ends and it goes back to normal. But that was just like, that's so.
There's
it
a
was
lot of
very
like
funny.
weird parts in this movie, but they're so funny, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
like tiny things in the movie that you wouldn't like that like we can't remember, but in the moment when you notice them, it's hilarious.
Yeah, there's so many like visual gags that you're just not expecting to
Yeah.
happen that make the movie so funny, like this backwards scene. And yeah, just thought that was really good. And then Nick and Hillary are just talking. Like I think they're spending the night together,
Yeah.
and Hillary's explaining kind of like what her past was like, and she reveals that she was like.
She was, like-
marooned on
she
an
was
island with
marooned-
some dude.
Marooned on an island. I forget the guy's name.
Nigel was his
Nigel
name.
was his name.
And they like so they were left on this deserted island and they start like building a life together. They build this super unrealistic
Yeah, it's
hut.
like a suburban house.
Yeah, just
but
made
it's
out of
made
like
out of like
bamboo and
shoots
stuff.
and stuff.
And
And,
then-
there's like a functioning garage, and it opens
Oh,
up, and there's
yeah.
like a bicycle and
Yeah.
stuff in there, like made of bamboo.
That was good. And then Hillary says like, "Oh, one day Nigel went to go fishing and he disappeared, and that was the last that I ever saw of him." And like she thinks like, "Oh, he must have just drowned." And then eventually she gets rescued from the island, whatever. And so we go back to Nick and Hillary just talking, and he says like, "Oh, I'm sorry that happened, but like thanks for telling me about your backstory, whatever. Let's go save your father now." And then do you remember where they go?
And
after
then they go to meet up with the resistance
that?
at it was like some kind of farm.
Yeah. Oh, the potato farm. So
It was a potato
so
farm. Yeah.
so it cuts to the next day and you see this guy just riding on a carriage. It's being pulled by a pony, and you hear this guy singing, or you hear singing, and then it like zooms in and you see that the pony is singing the
Yeah.
song instead of the guy.
And then it like
And-
starts coughing.
And he's like, "Excuse me, my pony's a little hoarse." Just like stuff that you would never expect
Yeah.
to see in a movie.
But it just like
It's
happens.
so funny.
It's just like it's kind of like fourth wall break and like
Oh,
unrealistic
I
stuff.
wanted to talk about because there is a huge fourth wall break in this movie. Nick's talking and he's like, it's not every day that you meet this girl at a restaurant and then find out that she was on a deserted island and her friend from the deserted island is dead, and then you meet up with a French resistance a French resistance to fight East Germans. It's not every day that something like that happens. And Hillary says, "Oh, it's like a bad movie. Like, this is just like a bad movie." And then they both stop and just look at the camera. And I love fourth wall breaks. I
Yeah.
think they're so funny
Yeah.
when they're done right. And like that was very well done, in my opinion. Yeah, so they get to this potato farm and they meet up with these guys who are Frenchmen, and they're part of this resistance against the East German regime. And their names were
Their
so
names
funny.
are so
They had, like-
funny and so stupid.
Yeah, some of their names were like Montage, Deja Vu, Avant Garde.
There's like chocolate mousse was one of them.
yeah,
I think.
Croissant and
Yeah.
Souffle were other names. And
my
just like,
favorite, my favorite was Deja Vu, because when Nick meets Deja Vu, Deja Vu says to him, "Haven't we met before?"
yeah, that was good. Yeah, and so this French resistance is basically like, "Oh, we've had this whole plan like going. We've been planning this for ages. We're going to break Dr. Flamand out of jail and we're going to send him out of Germany so he can be safe and he doesn't contribute to the East German regime's plans." And then the door opens and Nigel comes through the
Nigel,
door.
And it's revealed that Nigel is the leader of the French resistance.
Yeah.
And it's a really funny like reunion scene between Hillary and Nigel, because Nigel's there. He's like shirtless. He's basically naked.
Yeah,
he's got like no clothes
He's
on.
dressed the exact same as he
As
was
he
like
was
in
on
the
the
flashback
island, yeah.
scenes of the island. He's dressed the exact same. And Hillary's like fawning over him and she's like, "Oh, I thought you were dead. I thought you were dead." And it cuts to Nick and he's just rolling his eyes. I just thought that was good.
And Nigel, he's like standing there and he's like talking to Nick, and the whole time he's talking, Hillary just has like a ruler, like measuring his biceps.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. She was measuring how like his bicep. That was good. Yeah. So Nick, or then the French resistance, they are still at this farm, and then they get like attacked by just East German soldiers or police officers or whatever. They get attacked, so they have to leave, and they end up at this bar, and someone, I think it was Deja Vu, comes into the bar and he's holding a pigeon and he's like, "There's a traitor among us," and he throws the pigeon down on the table, and I forget who it was.
Somebody like
I think it was Nigel. He was like, "Good, you dealt with the traitor,"
yeah,
pointing to the pigeon.
like the pigeon's the traitor and not the person
And then
that sent the pigeon.
Yeah, and then Deja Vu was like, "No, this is a carrier pigeon. There's a traitor in our midst.
Yeah.
He sent the pigeon to the East Germans, and that's how they knew we were at this farm." And then they're just talking a bit, and someone comes up to Nick. Someone recognizes Nick, and they're like, "Oh, could you give us a signature or like an autograph or something?"
And he tries to pretend that like he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. He pretends he's like not Nick. He says, "No, you got the wrong guy."
Yeah.
And then so Nigel then says, "How do we know he's actually this man that he says he is?" Because they're all like skeptical. They don't really know if he's actually the Nick. So Nick then gets up and he says, "I'll prove it." And he goes, and it's another like musical scene,
Yeah,
like
it's
in this
very,
restaurant.
very Elvis, very
he goes,
like.
he goes up to the jukebox, and the one girl that like came up to him was like, "Look at him, he's at the jukebox." And then he like plays a song and he starts singing, and it's like,
It's very.
what was the song?
I forget. I think it might have been an Elvis Presley song, but
It was a parody. I know that, but
yeah, it was a parody of an
Yeah.
Elvis Presley song, but it was very much like Elvis, kind of like Grease almost,
Yeah.
in like the dancing and the outfits.
yeah,
and
that's what it
everything.
reminded me of. Grease at that point. I remember.
Yeah, that whole scene felt like a scene right out of Grease. So then, after that, he's like, "Yeah, I'm Nick," like whatever. They go to the prison because they need to break Dr. Flemond out of the prison. and
Oh, the whole like everything in the
everything
prison
about
scene
the prison
is
break
hilarious.
scene is
Originally,
amazing.
so they fly over the prison in a plane, and they
Hmm.
jump out of the plane. I liked because the plane said U-Haul on the
Yeah,
side of it. I don't know if you
yeah.
saw that, but yeah. And then they land, and they're like out there, and they're going over the plan on the outside of the prison.
Hmm.
And the plan was that Nigel and one of the other resistance members would dress up as a cow because for some reason this prison had like a cow herd.
Yeah,
Like
so the prison would herd the cows to the field every day and then herd them back. So the plan was that Nigel and I think Latrine was his name,
latrine.
which is another French name that I enjoyed. Um, they would dress up as the cow, and it's like this stupidly realistic cow
Yeah,
costume.
yeah.
So they like, and the cow's like wearing boots. Which
Yeah, the
I
cow
just thought
costume
looked
had
so
boots
funny.
on.
It looks so funny, but
Yeah, but that's part of the plan. And while he was like Nigel's detailing it, another part I really liked was it's like a shot just looking in the ground at the dirt, and Nigel has a stick, and he marks an X in the dirt, and he says this is where we are, and then like slowly he like draws a line like showing what path they're gonna take, and then all of a sudden there's just like a miniature like replica of the entire prison on the
oh
ground,
yeah, I
and it
remember.
just comes
Yeah,
into frame. Oh
yeah.
man.
And so during the whole scene, so basically the plan is that Nigel and Latrine will go into the prison and cut the power so that the rest of the group can go over the electrical fences to get in and rescue Dr. Flamin. So Nigel and Latrine go, they get in and they cut the power, and then Nick, Chocolate Mousse, and Deja Vu cut the fences and go into the
Oh, yeah.
prison.
When they cut the fence, Nick is the first one to crawl underneath it, and as he crawls up, slowly a pair of boots come into frame, and Nick is like freaked out because he's like, oh, it's a German soldier. The camera slowly pans up, and it's just boots.
It's just
There's
bo-
nobody
yeah.
wearing them.
Just yeah, this whole movie is so like the comedic timing of everything is great.
And eventually they continue on, and it's revealed that Nigel is the traitor.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what his plan was, but he was the traitor the whole time. And eventually they get Dr. Flamand. They get to Dr. Flamand's room in the prison, and they get there, and Dr. Flamand's like, oh, how ironic, and I had 1 day left to finishing my tunnel.
Yeah, this
And
was
Nick like looks under the bed, and there's like a tunnel dug, and
it
then
looked
cuts
like
it cuts to a shot of like a massive roadway tunnel under like a mountain or something.
yeah, I
And
think it was
said,
like the Liberty Tunnel,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's like, "Nice job."
It said like New Jersey 2
Yeah.
miles or something.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite
Yeah.
parts because it's just so so dumb, but like very very good. And Nick's just like, "Nice job." And then they get Dr. Flamand and they start to leave the prison. And then Hillary is waiting in a truck to like take them across the border or something. She's been waiting in a truck outside the prison, and Nigel comes up and he's like, "No, you're not going to use this truck." And he's like pointing a gun at her, and then they drive the
Yeah,
truck away.
and then he like basically kidnaps her in this truck, and they start driving away
Mhm.
to like ruin the plans of all the other people, like not let Dr. Flamand out of the country.
Yeah.
And so then they all group up there, and the person that was in the cow costume with Nigel tells everyone that he's the traitor and that he took off in the truck or whatever. And Nick finds a motorcycle
Mhm.
and goes after them. So this is another part that I really like. Nick is like, they have this like whole like slapstick like fighty scene
Oh my
as they're
gosh.
both like punching each other
Wait, the
like in the
underwater.
truck. I'm getting there. They're like
'Cause I wanna
punching.
talk about
They're
that
punching
too.
each other in the truck, and then eventually, Nick grabs Nigel, and they both. He
Like-
pulls him out of the truck, and they both go
over a bridge.
over the side of a bridge into the water, and then they're underwater punching each other.
and then
and
slowly like
Sl-
Nick punches Nigel pretty hard,
And
and
he
Nigel like
flies
flies
back.
back onto a table that's
Yeah, yeah.
underwater.
It's like a whole Wild West bar setup,
Yeah, like
but it's
slowly
underwater.
as they keep punching each other like farther back, like it's like
More and more is like
like
revealed.
Nigel
of, like,
gets
this,
slammed into an actual like bar,
yeah, into a
and
bar.
there's a
And
bartender
there's
back
a
there.
barkeep, and he grabs a bottle, and Nigel picks up a gun from the bar, and he
Ni-
goes to shoot Nick, but the bartender hits him over the head with this bottle, and he misses, and he hits like a chandelier.
Yeah, he hits a
underwater,
chandelier that
and
falls,
it like falls, and Nick like swims out of the way frantically.
yeah, and then like there's this whole group of cowboys
They're, like,
underwater at
playing
this
poker.
table. They're playing poker, and I think like a bullet like lands on the table, and they all stand up with their guns, and they're like ready to fight. And then they like Nick like comes back, or I think he does like one final punch, like hits Nigel and knocks him out, and then he swims up, and Hillary's waiting there, and they're just like, yeah, you did it, like no more traitor, let's get to the air base so we can get out of the country.
And so they take the truck and they drive to the plane that was originally planned to take everyone out of the country.
Yeah.
And they get there, and this is basically the end of the movie. Hillary's like, oh, I want to stay with the resistance, but eventually she decides to go with Nick and her father, and I got, were they going to America? Was that the plan?
I think they were going to America.
I really like the ending too, because it's like the resistance people were standing at this plane, and on the side of the plane for decoration there was like a target painted,
and they were just
and the
playing
one guy's
darts.
throwing darts at the target on the plane.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, so yeah, then Hillary and her father and Nick all leave in the plane, and that's how the movie ends. So I just like
before you say your final thoughts, I don't
Yeah.
know if you watched the credits, but at the
I
very
didn't.
end of the credits, it said this spot for rent at the end.
That's good.
So even when the movie's over, the jokes aren't over.
Yeah, I should have known to like watch through the credits, but I think I had to like go somewhere,
Yeah.
so I was like trying to end it as quickly
Yeah.
as possible. But I overall just final
Oh yeah.
final thoughts of the like I love parody movies just because they're something fun to watch, and like they're always just stupid
Yeah.
and like it just takes you out of like whatever for a while, and you can just have a good laugh. And I think that this is probably one of the best parody movies that I've ever seen. Just everything was so like on beat, and even though like stuff didn't make sense all the time, it like made sense in the
Yeah.
context of the film, if that makes sense. So like the underwater fight scene, it's stupid and it's sort of out of place, but like it's funny and it kind of
Yeah.
makes sense. Like they
And
could have
there's,
just
like,
done a boring underwater
There's so much
scene.
stuff like that. There's so many just like random parts that it's like you wouldn't see that normally in a movie. Like there wouldn't just be a bar underwater, but like for the sake of the joke, it's there.
Yeah.
I remember at one point they like threw a prison guard off a tower,
Mhm.
and there was a
Oh my
shot
gosh.
of him. There was a shot of him falling down. When he hit the ground, he was like made of glass or whatever.
Yeah, and he
just
shattered. That was
Oh,
another
man.
good part.
There's just so many parts like that. It's like hard to go over all of them, but every single time it's so funny to watch. You know, if
Yeah.
you have not seen this movie, I would highly recommend it. I feel like movies like
Definitely.
this are not made anymore. A lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of the time it's mostly just vocal comedy, but
Mhm.
this is a lot of visual comedy. And although it doesn't make 100% perfect sense,
Mhm.
it is still fantastic, and it's always hilarious. I was laughing consistently
Me too.
throughout the entire movie. It was great.
Yeah, usually in movies, even if they're like comedies, I don't like fully laugh at them. I
Yeah.
was like laughing out loud at this movie the whole time. My mom asked me what I was watching when I went downstairs, and I was like, "Oh, don't worry about it." Yeah, I think just comedy for the sake of it being comedy is something that a lot of movies are missing these days.
Yeah.
Like, I think just something fun and stupid that you can sit down and watch is just like they need to make more of those
Yeah.
still.
It almost felt like a YouTube video kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's like they don't really care about like
Mm-hmm.
the actual like story as much, but like it was still a good story, but like
Yeah.
the jokes were just so on point the entire time. Is just great.
Yeah, I was impressed with like how good the actual story was with all of this
Yeah,
humor
with all
on
the
top
jokes,
of
it's
it.
just
So yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie to anyone who wants a good laugh. Um, so they have films like Top Secret, but there's also films like if you like parody movies, you can watch stuff like Austin Powers or Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Just really good stories that are incredibly
Yeah.
entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. And yeah.
Final rating out of 10. What would you give
Final
it?
rating out of 10. I would give it like a 9 out of 10.
I'd give it a 9 too.
Yeah, just
Great movie. Just
yeah,
so
great
good.
movie. I definitely like I want to go watch this with other friends and
Yeah,
show
yeah.
people it because I just
Just
think
I want to like see their reaction to stuff like that. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's so great.
yeah, I definitely want to show this to people because I need to see people's reactions cuz like it's very good. So yeah, I would rate it 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think this was a really good movie to start off with
sure, yeah.
because there's so much to like talk about and laugh about and yeah, I think this was a very good recommendation on the part of Mr. Bender. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Bender.
you, Mr. Bender. So, speaking of Mr. Bender, for next episode, I'm not sure what genre we're thinking we're gonna ask him for. Maybe like an action or like a thriller or something. But we're not gonna do another comedy. I think every episode we're gonna ask for a different genre, and he's
Yeah.
gonna give it to us. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this
Yeah,
episode.
I think that's about it for this episode. I think we covered pretty much all we can
Yeah.
cover. Definitely recommend this movie. Go ahead and watch it. It's
Definitely,
on Amazon Prime. It's also on Pluto TV, I think.
Yeah.
Is that what you watched?
Yeah,
on?
that's what I watched.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can find it on YouTube and stuff, and you
Yeah.
you can also buy it. But who wants to buy movies now? And all the streaming services are there. But yeah, definitely go check this movie out. You'll have a ton of fun, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Ryan,
I'm Meredith,
and
and
we'll see you next episode.
see ya.